My hands were already in the warm dishwater. I was scrubbing a plate. The ceramic felt smooth under my fingers. The kitchen window showed a gray morning. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. Everything felt normal. But the shadows in the corner of my eye seemed to shift. They moved against the light, not with it. A soft scraping sound came from the living room. It was like furniture dragging. I paused, my hands still in the water. My brass key, heavy in my pocket, pressed against my thigh. I looked towards the living room door. Then I saw her. My mother stood by the counter, pouring coffee. Her back was to me. She moved slowly. Just as I was about to speak, the phone rang upstairs. It was the old rotary phone in the hall. I heard her voice from the receiver. "Tvero, can you get that?" I pulled my hands from the dishwater. The plate clinked softly against the sink. My mother was no longer at the counter. The phone kept ringing, its old bell echoing from upstairs. I walked towards the living room door. It stood ajar, just a crack, though I was sure I had closed it moments before. A cold draft brushed my cheek from the dark gap. The scraping sound was gone now, replaced by a faint, almost imperceptible hum. As I stepped into the hall, the overhead light flickered once, then settled into a dimmer glow. My brass key felt heavy, a cold weight against my leg, a small comfort. I glanced at the small table by the stairs. The antique silver letter opener, usually centered, was now pushed to the very edge, almost falling. The air felt thick, like static electricity before a storm. I started up the stairs, each step feeling heavier than the last. The phone's insistent ring pulling me upward, a silent pressure building behind me. I climb the stairs. The phone rings louder now, a sharp, insistent sound. My hand brushes the banister. It feels colder than usual. I reach the landing. The old rotary phone sits on its small table. Its black cord snakes across the polished wood. I see my reflection in the dusty mirror on the opposite wall. My face looks tired. Then a flicker. Something moves behind me in the reflection. A tall, dark shape. It's gone before I can turn. I blink. The mirror shows only the empty hall. I tell myself it was just a trick of the light, but a faint, sweet smell now hangs in the air. It wasn't there before. My brass key feels heavy in my pocket. I reach for the phone. My fingers brush the receiver. I notice a thin, dark line on the mirror's surface. It wasn't dust. It looked like a fresh scratch, running vertically, right where the dark shape had been. I reach for the receiver. My fingers are almost on the cold plastic. Then the entire phone table lurches. It scrapes loudly against the floorboards. The rotary phone spins halfway around, its cord twisting tight. A sharp metallic clack echoes in the quiet hall. I pull my hand back quickly. My heart hammers against my ribs. It felt like something had shoved the table from underneath. I tell myself it was just the old house settling, a sudden draft. But the air around me feels heavy now, not just sweet but thick. I look at the mirror again. The thin scratch is still there, a dark line cutting through my tired reflection. My brass key feels like a lead weight in my pocket. I didn't move. I just stood there, staring at the phone, still ringing. The phone kept ringing. Its shrill sound cut through the heavy air. I stood frozen, my hand still hovering near the table. Then, a shadow detached itself from the wall beside the coat rack. It wasn't just a shadow. It was darker than the dim hall light allowed, a deeper void. It stretched, then coalesced into a form that was almost human, but too tall, too thin. Its edges shimmered like heat haze, but the air was cold. I watched it move, gliding without sound towards the phone table. It didn't have eyes, but I felt it looking at me. A long, dark limb, not quite an arm, reached out. It touched the phone receiver. The plastic, already cold, visibly frosted over, a thin layer of ice forming instantly. The ringing stopped. A low, guttural hum vibrated through the floorboards, a sound I felt in my teeth. The scratch on my cheek burned. My brass key felt like a stone in my pocket. I didn't move. I just watched the frost spread. The hum vibrated through the floor, a deep, unsettling sound. My eyes were fixed on the entity. It still stood by the phone, its form wavering slightly, like smoke. The frost on the receiver spread, creeping along the cord, turning the black plastic white. I felt a chill that wasn't just from the air. It was a cold that seeped into my bones. My scratch burned, a sharp reminder. I knew I couldn't stay. My hand twitched, a silent command to my legs. I needed to move, to get past it, to the front door. I took one slow step back, then another. The floorboards creaked faintly under my weight. The entity didn't turn its head, but its form shifted. It elongated, stretching across the narrow hall, blocking my path to the door. Its edges sharpened, no longer hazy. It was a solid wall of darkness now, impossibly wide. The hum intensified, vibrating in my chest. My brass key felt heavy, cold against my skin. I was trapped. A hum vibrated through the floor, a deep, unsettling sound. My eyes were fixed on the entity. It still stood by the phone, its form wavering slightly, like smoke. The frost on the receiver spread, creeping along the cord, turning the black plastic white. I felt a chill that wasn't just from the air. It was a cold that seeped into my bones. My scratch burned, a sharp reminder. I knew I couldn't stay. My hand twitched, a silent command to my legs. I needed to move, to get past it, to the front door. I took one slow step back, then another. The floorboards creaked faintly under my weight. The entity didn't turn its head, but its form shifted. It elongated, stretching across the narrow hall, blocking my path to the door. Its edges sharpened, no longer hazy. It was a solid wall of darkness now, impossibly wide. The hum intensified, vibrating in my chest. My brass key felt heavy, cold against my skin. I was trapped. The darkness pressed in. It was a physical force, pushing against my chest, against my shoulders. The air grew thick, hard to draw. I felt the wall behind me, cold plaster against my back. The hallway was shrinking. I could hear the wood groaning, splintering under the pressure. The entity didn't move, but the space around it compressed. My breath hitched. The scratch on my arm throbbed, a dull ache now mirroring the pressure. I tried to shift, to find purchase, but there was nowhere to go. The darkness was relentless. The pressure intensified. My lungs burned. The darkness wasn't just in front of me. It felt like it was behind me too, seeping through the plaster, pressing from all sides. I could hear whispers now, faint and indistinct, just at the edge of my hearing. They seemed to come from the walls themselves, from the air. My eyes darted, searching for a source, but there was nothing but the solid, unmoving darkness of the entity. My mind raced, trying to make sense of the impossible. Was the hallway truly shrinking, or was it just my perception twisting? The groaning wood, the splintering sounds, they felt real. My scratch pulsed, a hot, angry line on my forearm, confirming that this was not a dream. My brass key, cold and heavy, dug into my palm. I squeezed it, grounding myself. The whispers grew louder, forming words I almost understood, but they dissolved before I could grasp them. A cold dread settled deep in my stomach. It wasn't just the physical confinement. It was the feeling of being utterly alone, watched by something that defied all reason, something that could warp the very space around me. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to block out the impossible, but the whispers only grew clearer, closer. The pressure vanished. It was sudden. I gasped, pulling in a deep, shaky breath. The darkness receded, not fading, but simply gone. The hallway stretched out before me again, normal. The walls were solid, the floorboards were still, but a fine layer of dust now coated everything, disturbed in strange patterns, as if something vast had scraped past. A faint, metallic tang hung in the air, a ghost of the impossible. My scratch pulsed, a hot line on my forearm, a physical reminder. My brass key, still clutched tight, felt cold against my damp palm. I knew it wasn't truly gone. It had only withdrawn. The silence that followed was not peaceful. It felt like a held breath, waiting. I understood then. This was not an end. It was just a pause. The dust settled, but my mind did not. I traced the strange patterns with my eyes, seeing the ghost of something immense that had scraped through this space. The metallic tang in the air was fading, but the memory of its impossible weight lingered, a phantom pressure. My scratch burned, a fresh, angry line on my forearm, a testament to its recent presence. My brass key felt heavy, cold, a small, solid comfort against the vastness of what I now understood. This wasn't an isolated incident, a singular terror to be endured and then forgotten. It was a rhythm, a cycle. It came, it went, and it would come again. I was just in the quiet space between its breaths, a brief reprieve before the next inevitable return. The silence was not peace. It was merely the pause before the next note in a song I could never escape. The horror wasn't something that happened to me. It was something I lived inside,